Now, it's great that in this case, just knowing that an error exists is enough context, but that's not always the situation. What if this function web call returned more than one error? Now we might need to know, was it error A or error B? The context of knowing that there's just a value stored inside the error interface is not enough. Let's take a look at that scenario. Here's a scenario right now where we're going to have a situation where web call could return more than one error. When you have a function that can return more than one error, what I want you to do is use these error variables. And a lot of times we put them in a block, in a variable block, just to keep them together. Now, there's some naming conventions we use here in Go. When we're going to use an error variable, we're going to use this ERR naming convention. They're going to be exported variables. They're going to be defined at the top of the code that's using them, or the name of the file for the package. And ERR is that naming convention. So this is ERR bad request, ERR page moved. And you can see that we're using the actual errors package right now and the factory function to construct them. So I've got these two error variables now that are well defined. And if I go over to web call on line 42, we could see, depending on whether we pass true or false, we might get the ERR bad request, or we might get ERR page moved. This is now a function that can return one or many, in this case one or two, different variables for the error. Now, when this is the case and we're using error variables, this is how we're going to be handling those errors. If you look at line 22, we're going to make a call to web call. Web call returns that error interface value with or without a concrete piece of data stored inside of it, the error string. We're going to check to see if there is a concrete value stored inside of ERR, and if there is, well, we're now jumping into the switch statement on line 23. And on line 23, we're asking, is that error variable based on the ERR bad request variable, or is it based on page moved? We're going to use the switch case now to determine which variable is in play, and then we'll be able to handle that error accordingly. And I've got the default case in case it's neither of those two variables. So error variables have to be your next choice when just knowing that there's an error in there is not enough. And I want to use the default error type, right, that ERR string, that error string, first before we create any custom error types. You've got to be clear here. We don't want to just start off using custom error types for the sake of, right? We don't want to do anything for the sake of doing anything. That's just type pollution. So as long as these variables are giving us enough context, this is what we want to do. And it's really going to be a way of us telling the user of our APIs, hey, I got you here, I care about you, and I want to make sure that you can maintain those high levels of integrity. But what happens if the error variable is not going to give us enough context? Then we've got to start thinking about those custom error types.